I was living in this sort of half-conscious, half-awake state, or half-unconscious, half-awake state. I was perfectly aware of all the harm that we were causing Iraqis, and at the same time, I believed everyone who said that what we were doing was great. When we loaded up into trucks and drove to Fallujah for the assault, and we passed families out in the desert just wandering, I finally realized what it meant when they told us that all the civilians had left their city, and then I quickly forgot it. They inserted us into the center of the city, and while the sun was up, the gunfire was constant and accurate. We took casualties right away, and as soon as people started to die, everything spiraled out of control. We started going house to house, kicking in people's doors, searching through people's houses for weapons caches and resistance fighters. The houses were just lived in. There were still pots and pans on the stoves, food in the refrigerators, clothes in their dresser drawers. There was very little supervision in all this chaos, so we started looting everything that looked valuable. And this was all close quarters combat, so it was very bloody. And the people in my unit, they really started to go crazy. It was as bad as anyone has accused it of being. People committed very serious crimes, and in a lot of situations, our higher-ups were perfectly aware of it. The bodies of dead resistance fighters were strewn all over the streets. At one point, we went into the courtyard of someone's house, and the bodies of 2 resistance fighters were lying there. We ended up staying there for a couple of hours, so I had to sit there just a few feet away from these bodies. These 2 dead resistance fighters couldn't have been older than I was. They were wearing sneakers and pants and t-shirts just like any teenager in the US would wear. Their hair was cut fashionably, and in all respects, they looked just like anyone walking the streets of Fitchburg, Massachusetts. I remember feeling absolutely ridiculous as I sat there over their dead bodies in their city, and very likely in their neighborhood. I remember thinking that the only real difference between me and them was that they had every right in the world to be fighting against me, whereas I had no right to be fighting against them. It was a moment of clarity, like recovered alcoholics talk about. But when the captain said we were moving, I did exactly like I was told, and I didn't think about those 2 dead bodies for a long time. This is what Fallujah looked like to the people who planned the assault. And this is what it looked like to me as they trucked us out of the city. It turns out that my drill instructor was exactly right about me. I was only in it for what I could get out of the Marine Corps. My motivations were selfish right from the start, and those motivations blinded me from seeing the harm that I was bringing to Iraqis. And that continued for another couple years afterwards. After I got out of the Marine Corps, all I wanted to do was forget Fallujah and leave it all behind me. I wanted to go home and work and drink beer and be the hometown hero that I set out to be. But it wasn't as easy as I thought it would be, and I could never tell my story and be proud of it. In the back of my mind, I was always wondering what happened to the people who lived in Fallujah. Where did they go? How did they survive in the desert? Well, in the last year or so, I decided to take some time out of my life and look into what happened to them, and this is what I found. Apparently, the people in Fallujah are suffering from a really serious health crisis, affecting mostly children, which coincidentally began just after the assault in 2004. Infant mortality rates, birth defects, cancer rates are through the roof. They're seeing extreme rates of babies being born with missing limbs, mentally retarded, 6 fingers, huge tumors, scaly skin, and horribly deformed. This baby has 3 heads. The little bit of research that has been done on this health crisis has shown that the health problems in Fallujah are common effects of radiation exposure. And the amount of these cases that they're seeing in Fallujah are actually higher than in Hiroshima and Nagasaki after the atomic bombs. The research suggests that the most likely cause for all this is depleted uranium weapons. This is Dr. Entisar Ariabi. She gave me some of these pictures that I just showed to you. She has co-authored an important report that came out just this year about this health crisis. That's her in the background. Dr. Ariabi is currently living in London, but she was born in Baghdad and was the head pharmacist at the Yarmouk Teaching Hospital in Baghdad from 1997 to 2006. She is currently on the board of directors of the Cancer and Birth Defects Foundation. Now, I'm going to read to you an excerpt from the Cancer and Birth Defect Foundation's website. Dramatic and unprecedented increases in birth defects, cancer, and leukemia in the Iraqi city of Fallujah have been reported anecdotally since the city was bombarded by the occupation in 2004. Through the work of the Cancer and Birth Defects Foundation team, we have been able to show that there is a humanitarian disaster in the city of Fallujah, and it began after the bombing campaign in 2004. Our study was published in the International Journal of Environmental Studies and Public Health in July of 2010. The study shows that the people of Fallujah are experiencing higher rates of cancer, leukemia, infant mortality, and sexual mutations than those recorded among the survivors in Hiroshima and Nagasaki in the years after those Japanese cities were incinerated by US atomic bomb strikes in 1945. This is Dr. Muhammad Tarek al-Daraji. He has also authored several reports about this health crisis, though they have been mostly ignored. He was born in Fallujah. He started the first NGO in Fallujah. He's a biologist by profession, and he's currently the president of the Conservation Center of Environment and Reserves in Fallujah. And he is the director of the Monitoring Net of Human Rights in Iraq. These two doctors are doing important work on this health crisis that our occupation has caused, and their work is going largely unnoticed. They are the reason why we invited you all here tonight. If we reach our goal tonight of $4,300, we're going to be able to bring these two doctors to Boston so that we can try to give their work the attention that it deserves. We've invited these doctors to speak at a very important event that we're holding in November, as a part of a larger series of events for the first annual Remember Fallujah Week. We'll be holding speaking events, documentary film screenings, and other events for the entire week of November the 15th to the 21st to commemorate the 6th anniversary of the second assault on Fallujah. We've asked these doctors to come to our main event and present their research to the American people. I think that it's extremely important that Americans hear what they have to say. The human costs of our policies have to be known. It has to become common knowledge for every American. We can't afford otherwise, and neither can Iraqis. And for this, we're asking for your support. The success or failure of this event in November will determine to a large extent what we're capable of doing in the future. But no matter what, I want to promise to you that the Justice for Fallujah Project is not going to go away after the Remember Fallujah Week. And we're not just going to be raising awareness. We'll be working with Dr. al-Daraji to gather testimonies from veterans to bring to the Human Rights Council. And we'll do that every year until they acknowledge the human rights violations that were committed, and the people of Fallujah see at least some amount of justice. We'll be working throughout the year to set up lines of communication between Iraqis and Americans. We'll be working to create a culture of humanity across national borders, while working against individualistic and militaristic ways of thinking here at home. And I'm crossing my fingers that we'll be able to somehow connect the medical community here in Boston with Dr. Ariabi's Cancer and Birth Defects Foundation in the Fallujah General Hospital. So, in conclusion, I like to tell my story as an example of what not to do. Don't ever ignore that feeling in your gut when you know that something is wrong. Don't ever let what's good for you and your future prevent you from doing the right thing. And it's not enough to sit back and agree that something is wrong. You have to take action to correct it. Those are the lessons that I learned from my experience, and those lessons make up the philosophy behind the Justice for Fallujah Project. Please be generous, give us what you can spare, and please mark Remember Fallujah Week on your calendars, November 15th to the 21st. Thanks.